Most miners in the Klondike would drive straight past this enormous pile of dirt without giving it a second glance. To them, it's nothing more than waste, old tailings left behind by miners more than a century ago. Ground that was already processed, searched, and declared worthless long ago. But one man stops the truck. Tony Beets doesn't see garbage when he looks at that pile. He sees opportunity, and possibly millions in gold hidden in plain sight. While others spend fortunes chasing untouched land beneath frozen permafrost, Tony is betting everything on dirt everyone else abandoned. For over 100 years, this forgotten mound sat ignored. Generations of miners believed it had already given up everything it had. But Tony has a different theory. What if the old miners missed something? And if he's right, this worthless pile could turn into one of the smartest gambles in Klondike history. But there's more at stake than just gold. The entire Beets empire, and the future of his family mining legacy, hangs in the balance. If you enjoy incredible gold mining stories, hidden treasures, and unbelievable discoveries, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next adventure. Tony doesn't think like most miners, and that's exactly what makes him dangerous. While others compete for fresh ground, paying huge money for claims and fighting over the same patches of land, Tony looked at those forgotten tailings and ran the numbers nobody else bothered with. 100 years ago, gold recovery technology was primitive. Early miners didn't have modern wash plants or advanced recovery systems. Their old sluice boxes couldn't catch the fine gold, the tiny flakes that slip right through like grains of sand, which means a lot of real gold was left behind. Tony's idea was bold but simple. Run that same dirt again, using modern equipment. The ground is already dug up. No stripping overburden, no thawing frozen permafrost. Just feed the material through a modern wash plant and recover what the old-timers missed. It was either a brilliant strategy or a reckless gamble that could wreck a mining operation. This season would reveal which one it was, and the stakes were even higher because Tony wasn't running just one site. He was managing an entire network of operations across the Klondike. Multiple wash plants, multiple crews, fuel burning, wages piling up, machines running day and night. Every site was another opportunity for success or failure. At one location, Wash Plant Harold was chewing through those old-timer tailings, the dirt most miners considered worthless. Meanwhile, Cousin Mike had two separate operations running along Indian River, at Slucifer and Paradise Hill, working ground that had already proven to be rich. Then there was Kevin. Kevin Beets, Tony's oldest son, was in his first season running his own independent mine at Scribner Creek. For the first time, the operation carried Kevin's name, not his father's. Kevin had big plans. He wanted to prove he could run a gold mine his own way. But this wasn't just about ambition. He had set a massive target. 1,000 ounces of gold. That was the number he needed just to break even and show everyone he deserved to be there. Kevin and his partner Faith knew the pressure was real. The gamble had to pay off. Unfortunately, things had already started going wrong. Earlier in the season, breakdowns and a shortage of crew members pushed Kevin far behind schedule. Equipment failures that should have taken hours to repair dragged on for days. Every delay meant less dirt running through the plant, and every lost shift pushed that 1,000-ounce goal further out of reach. Some of Tony's experienced crew members quietly questioned whether Kevin was ready to lead an operation this big, whether the Beets name was helping him or weighing him down. Kevin heard it all, every whispered doubt, every sideways glance, and now he only had 4 weeks left to prove them wrong. But before anyone could even think about counting gold, disaster struck back at Tony's risky tailings operation. The wash plant was running at full speed. Excavator operator Andrew Moran was feeding roughly 100 yards of material into Wash Plant Harold every single hour. Think about that pace. 100 yards of century-old dirt moving through the plant every hour, non-stop. Loader operator Roy Hoax was juggling multiple jobs at once, bringing fresh tailings to the pay pile while hauling the processed waste about 200 feet away to the dump site. Everything was running with precision, every movement timed, every minute important. This wasn't casual mining. It was a carefully tuned operation designed to squeeze gold out of dirt most miners had written off. Then the radio crackled. "I think I hooked something." Those words instantly make any miner nervous. Within seconds, the problem became obvious. The main water pipe, the lifeline of the entire sluicing system, had burst. Water exploded out of the line, spraying across the cut like a fire hydrant that had been blown open. The pump screamed as pressure built inside the system. Monica immediately grabbed the radio. The pump had to be shut down. And here's the brutal reality. Every minute that wash plant sat idle was costing Tony about $6,000 worth of gold. With only 4 weeks of mining left, downtime like that could destroy the season. If they needed replacement parts from Dawson City or even Whitehorse, the delay could stretch into days. But Monica didn't hesitate. She quickly assessed the damage and made a call. Instead of replacing the pipe entirely, she requested a collar and a breather valve, tools for a quick field repair. Mike confirmed over the radio that he had the parts and was on his way. What happened next was pure mining improvisation. Working quickly, they lifted the pipe and clamped a rubber-lined metal collar around the damaged section, sealing the hole. Then Mike installed a breather valve. That small part was crucial. Without it, trapped air inside the pipe would create an airlock when the pump restarted. Water wouldn't flow properly, and the wash plant would remain dead in the water. The breather valve allowed that trapped air to escape, keeping the water moving smoothly. Within minutes, the repair was finished. It wasn't pretty, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to work. They restarted the system, and the wash plant roared back to life. Tony arrived right as everything got moving again. When Monica explained the situation and the quick repair, Tony nodded. "You made the right call," he told her. That moment meant more than fixing a pipe. Monica had just proven she could make tough decisions under pressure. Exactly what it takes to lead in the mining world. Another piece of the Beets family legacy falling into place. Weeks later, the season finally came to an end. The wash plants shut down. The gold was cleaned and dried. Everything was ready for the scale. This was the moment of truth for the entire Beets operation. Tony already had 5,290 ounces recorded from earlier weigh-ins, and unbelievably, he was only 5 ounces away from breaking his all-time gold record. 5 ounces. After the massive gamble on old-timer tailings, after broken pipes, sleepless nights, and millions spent on fuel, equipment, and payroll, it all came down to just 5 ounces of gold. Only a few small ounces stood between Tony Beets and the biggest gold season of his entire career. Just a handful more, and history would be made. And the best part? There was still more gold waiting to be weighed. "All right, what do we weigh first?" Tony grinned. "Let's start with the smallest pile, then it only gets better from there." The first gold on the scale came from Wash Plant Herald, the infamous old-timer tailings. The same dirt most miners considered worthless. A century-old waste pile that Tony had bet his reputation on. For years, miners drove past those piles without a second thought. To them, it was nothing but garbage left behind by miners long gone. But when the gold from that garbage dirt hit the scale, the numbers spoke for themselves. 46 ounces. That's roughly $124,000 in gold. From dirt that someone else had thrown away 100 years ago. Tony leaned forward immediately, already running calculations in his head. "How many hours did you run that for?" "About 76 hours or so." Tony nodded. "So, roughly 5 ounces an hour." The gamble was working. The so-called trash dirt was actually paying off. But that was only the beginning. Next up was a Cousin Mike's operation on Indian River, specifically the ground at Slucifer, the operation everyone had been watching closely. The gold was poured onto the scale. The number settled at 211.88 ounces. That's more than $565,000 worth of gold. Mike couldn't hide his reaction. Indian River was performing exactly the way Tony had predicted. Then came the gold from Paradise Hill, Mike's second operation. Another pile of gold slid onto the scale. The final number, 228.7 ounces, more than $600,000 in gold. Tony was already adding the totals in his head before anyone else finished punching numbers into a calculator. The season was building towards something massive, something historic, but there was still one final pile left to weigh. And this one meant more than any of the others. Kevin's gold. Tony turned toward his eldest son. "So, how's it been going at Scribner?" Kevin answered calmly. "Not too bad. We wrapped up mining and got everything finished." But behind that calm voice was the pressure of an entire season. Kevin Beets stood there looking at the pile of gold that represented months of work, stress, and setbacks. 3 weeks of hard sluicing, months of equipment failures, endless doubts from experienced miners who believed he wasn't ready. Now, everything came down to this one moment. "We set a pretty big goal this year," Kevin explained. 1,000 ounces. That number wasn't just ambitious. It was necessary. That was the amount Kevin needed just to break even. To reach that target, he needed 320 ounces from this final weigh-in. Anything less. And his first season running a mine would officially be considered a failure. All those whispers from veteran miners would suddenly sound a lot louder. Tony nodded. "Well, let's weigh it and see what you've got. I'm curious." The gold started pouring onto the scale. 10, 20, 40, 50. Kevin's expression tightened. 80, 90, 110. The pile kept growing. 140, 150, 180, 190. Tony watched his son closely, reading every reaction. 200, 250, 260. Kevin finally let out a long breath, like he'd been holding it for months. "Oh man, what a relief," he said. "Now I can finally pay everyone." Tony looked at his son in that moment, a first-year mine boss who had faced breakdowns, delays, and constant doubt, and still managed to pull through. "For your first year, Kevin," Tony said, "that's a lot better than most guys do." He nodded with pride. "I'm happy for you guys." Then Manny stepped forward to calculate the full totals from the Beets operations. Every ounce from every wash plant, every crew, every site across the entire Beets empire. "So where does that put us?" Tony asked. Manny looked down at the numbers. 5,777.12 ounces. Tony smiled. "So, 777 ounces over the target." He paused, then added with a grin, "That's a hell of a lot better than last year." But the real headline number came next. When they added everything together, Tony's operations, Mike's massive Indian River gold, and Kevin's breakthrough season at Scribner, the final total was staggering. 6,834 ounces of gold. At current prices, that gold was worth roughly $18.3 million. For once, Tony Beets didn't even try to hide how pleased he was. "That's more gold than we've ever had before," he said. "And with the gold prices today, that's serious money." Someone asked the obvious question. "So you're happy?" Tony shrugged with a smirk. "What do you mean? Yeah, I'm happy." And when you think about it, the story behind that $18.3 million payday makes it even more incredible. Remember that mountain of dirt everyone else ignored? The old-timer tailings that miners tossed aside more than 100 years ago. Piles of gravel and mud that early prospectors believed had already been stripped clean of anything valuable. For generations, miners drove right past them without even slowing down, convinced there was nothing left to find. Modern crews spent millions chasing untouched ground, drilling new claims, and digging through frozen permafrost looking for fresh pay dirt. But Tony saw something different. Where everyone else saw waste, he saw possibility. He looked at those forgotten tailings and asked a simple question. What if the old-timers didn't get it all? Mining technology a century ago was crude compared to modern wash plants and recovery systems. Back then, plenty of fine gold slipped through the cracks. Entire fortunes were unknowingly left behind in the dirt. Tony understood that. So, he did something most miners would never dare to do. He gambled an entire season on ground that had already been mined once before. At the time, plenty of people thought it was a crazy idea. After all, why bet millions of dollars on dirt that had already been declared worthless? Why risk the entire operation on something everyone else ignored? But sometimes the biggest rewards come from the risks nobody else is willing to take. And in this case, the gamble paid off. Add to that Mike's huge gold production at Indian River, Kevin proving every single doubter wrong at Scribner, and a family operation that could fix a burst pipe in minutes instead of shutting down for hours. That kind of teamwork matters in the Klondike. Out there, every hour counts. When equipment breaks, and it always does, some crews lose entire days waiting for repairs. But the Beets family has spent decades building a system where everyone knows their role. When something goes wrong, they jump in, solve the problem, and get the gold flowing again. That efficiency alone can mean the difference between a good season and a record-breaking one. And this season became exactly that. The result? The biggest gold haul in the history of the Beets family. $18.3 million earned through risk, hard work, and relentless determination. But for Tony, the story isn't only about money. Gold is important, of course. It's the reason every miner wakes up before sunrise and works through freezing rain, mud, and mechanical disasters. But the real value of this season came from something deeper. It came from watching the next generation step up. Tony once explained his philosophy in a way that says everything about how he built his empire. "A lot of people would love to be in my position," he said, "to have a bunch of kids and be able to set them up." Then he added the part that matters most. But they still have to succeed. At the end of the day, it's a business. And that's exactly what happened this season. Monica proved she could make tough decisions under pressure. When things got difficult, she didn't hesitate. She made the calls that kept the operation moving forward. Kevin, who had faced plenty of criticism and doubt over the years, showed that he could run his own ground and hit the numbers. Scribner wasn't just a test of equipment, it was a test of leadership. And he passed. Meanwhile, Mike's massive production from Indian River pushed the total even higher, turning what might have been a good season into a historic one. Together, their efforts created something bigger than any single claim. They proved that the Beets family operation isn't just surviving in the Klondike, it's thriving. At the end of the season, when the machines finally shut down and the last cleanup was complete, the gold count told the story. 6,834 ounces, a number that represents thousands of hours of digging, hauling, washing, repairing, and pushing forward no matter what the Yukon threw at them. For Tony, standing there and looking at that total meant more than just a financial win. It meant the future of the Beets empire looked stronger than ever. Because gold claims eventually run out. Ground gets mined. Seasons end. But a family that knows how to work together, solve problems, and keep the operation moving forward, that's something far more valuable than gold. And if this season proved anything, it's that the next generation of the Beets family is ready. Ready to run the mines, ready to face the risks, ready to continue the legacy built by Tony Beets. The Klondike has tested them all, and together, they delivered the greatest season the Beets family has ever seen. If you enjoy incredible gold mining stories, hidden fortunes, and real Klondike adventures, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next amazing discovery.